Hey, okay, so if you've been watching any of my videos, you've probably heard me talk before about creating a workflow for something or other. And I got a question a few weeks ago that when I was on a call with someone, and they were literally like, "What is a workflow? Like, I've heard of it, but what actually is it, and how does it work?" And so I wanted to clear that up because I think it's one of those things that maybe I say all the time and I haven't been very clear about. So WTF is a workflow. Do you need one? And the answer is yes. It's like honestly one of the biggest keys to saving time and to not reinvent the wheel for projects that you do over and over again in your business or you want to start doing over and over again. So let me give you an example of a content workflow. So this is something that a lot of us are making content every single week, either recording a podcast or recording a video or going live or writing a blog post or something like that, and usually there's a process that surrounds doing that thing. So maybe on your to-do list it just says record this week's podcast. That's cool, but I know for a fact that before you record that podcast, you got to come up with the podcast idea. You have to think about the actual like points of what you're going to cover. You have to invite a guest, maybe reach out to that guest, confirm with them, blah blah blah. There's a process that you go through before you even start recording, and then after you record there's a whole process that needs to happen after that too. You send it to this person, you edit it here, you upload it here, you blah blah blah, right? You create a graphic. All of those things can be part of your workflow. And basically what the workflow does is it creates a concrete plan of action that you do from top to bottom every time you create this podcast or do whatever the thing is that you're having a workflow for. So it could be any content workflow. It could be a workflow for really anything that you do more than once in your business. And this is really important because it does two really cool things. The first thing is the less you have to think about, like, okay, so I've recorded the podcast. Now, what's next? The less you have to think about those like little steps, the more creative you can actually be when it comes to recording the podcast or whatever the things are that you're doing. It frees up that part of your brain to just be more creative, more inspired, and not get bogged down in the tiny little details that really don't matter. Well, they do matter, but once you've made the decision and once you've decided on them, you don't need to think about it every single time, right? I always think about how, like, I think Steve Jobs and Obama both just like had the same thing in their closet. Like it was just the black tee with the black turtleneck and the jeans, pretty iconic outfit. But he made the choice. He saw himself in the outfit and he was like, this is iconic and I'm not wearing anything else ever again. And the reason that he did that is to free up that brain space from thinking like, what should I wear today? And we can kind of apply that principle to most things in our business. Maybe not, what you wear every day if you don't want to do that. And so, yeah, it allows you to have that brain space for other things. But the other thing that it does is it allows you to start to outsource this workflow as soon as possible. So even if right now you don't have a team, you're not even sure like if a team is going to even be on your horizon, I want you to start creating a workflow for yourself. But then, it's only going to be an asset to you if you do want to start bringing someone on board. And a lot of times I will talk to someone and they're like, yeah, I think I need a VA because I'm running out of time. I want an assistant of some kind, but I don't even know what I would get their help with. Like, I just have to do everything. I'm the one who knows how to do it. I don't know, I don't have anything in place. This is where you're going to be really grateful that you have these processes in place because you're going, oh yeah, all of these things here don't require me except for when I show up to record the podcast. So how do you start creating your first workflow? So I always say workflow it. And whenever, like to myself, whenever I find myself doing something that I've done once before, I write a mental note or I put it on my to-do list. I say, Alyssa, send that email and / workflow it. Because if I've ever sent an email more than once or, made a calendar event more than once, anything, if you ever do it more than once, it's that project is ripe for a workflow. And so what I recommend for your first workflow, and really any time you create a workflow, to make it really easy for you is when you're going to do it, let's say it's like the third, fourth, 50th time you've done it, rather than creating your standard operating procedures, which is just so boring. And I tried creating them because I thought it was the thing I needed to do in the beginning. And everyone will tell you you need your standard procedures. But really, that's just too boring. And also nobody really works that way anymore in the virtual space. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to open your computer, click Loom or record your screen, go into Zoom like I'm recording this video right now, and record yourself doing that project. You can be totally silent if you want, or what I like to do is like, as I'm recording it, I'm like, okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this video title that's here, and I'm going to move it down here into the email section, and I'm going to start writing the email. And once the email's done, I'm going to open up, ConvertKit, and I'm going to put it into here. And what I like to do is I like to double check the subject line. I bold this area, all the little things that sometimes you think, especially when you're starting to hire your first person, like they're not going to know how to just do it like me. I just know where I like to put a GIF, or, where I like to bold things, or what I like to link and where that link goes and where to get that link and how I log in. All of those things you're just going to show someone. Even if you don't have anyone on your team yet, you're going to show them from top to bottom using some sort of screen recorder that you have. And then you can put that in wherever you want. If you use Asana or Trello or something, create a little card that's like how I do this, how I download a CSV from my email provider, how I reach out to potential guests for the podcast, whatever. So now you have your workflow. Now, this is great for delegating, but when you're actually working for yourself, what I love to do with the workflow is I like to now add every part of that workflow to my calendar, kind of in chunks. So you don't want to add every tiny little task as a calendar event. But let's take this podcast example again. So what you might do is you have in your calendar, all right, every Tuesday I record the podcast for an hour. And I know before that I need time to create my outline, my video or my recording notes and all of that. That takes me about an hour or two. And I like to do that the day before. So on Monday, I'm going to put another hour in my calendar for video notes and blah, blah, blah. And if I'm having a guest, I know I want to reach out to them at least a week ahead of time. So on the Monday beforehand, I'm going to reach out to 2 or 3 guests and get their confirmation. And on the Wednesday of that week, the week before, what I want to do is I also want to create some graphics that promotes whoever my next guest is going to be, or something like that, right? Like I don't have a podcast, so I'm kind of making up what I think the workflow might be, but see how I've kind of worked backwards there and put chunks of time in my calendar. And then what you want to do with that calendar event is say, repeat every Monday, repeat every Wednesday, repeat every Tuesday, whatever it is. So now you have this in your calendar every single week. And the reason that this is so important is, number one, it takes all of that, mental stress away. But number two, rather than just having a little thing on your to-do list that says record podcast with no time next to it, and it really just seems like one small thing on a list, on a to-do list, right? So it doesn't really give you a good idea of how much time you need and how much space you need. So you're really, maybe that's the only thing on your to-do list, and you're likely to say yes to 2 or 3 other meetings, or, to whatever else you might be doing, or take on that new client, when in reality, you actually have about 4 hours or 5 hours of work to do that needs to be accounted for in your calendar. And that's where your workflow really comes into play. So I hope this wasn't too boring for you. I would really love to know in the comments if this is the type of thing that you find really boring and you want to just be done for you. For example, inside MPQ, we literally give checklists and workflows for things like how to have your first launch or a webinar, or host a challenge, or what to do after you post a blog post. And we just give you kind of like done for you workflows, because I know some people are like, this is boring, just give me the checklist. Or if this is something that you're into and you like talking about these little like small details that actually make a really big difference when it comes to being more productive and taking control of your time and making sure that you actually are accounting for what you're doing and what you want to do, right? So, and I'll get into that in another video, but you absolutely need a workflow. I'd love to hear from you what things you want to workflow in 2022, what things you've done 2, 3, 10 times that you need a process for to make it easier, quicker, and more enjoyable for you. All right, I'll talk to you next week.